Welcome to the Riff. Today, Jeremy and Justin sit down to talk about missional drift. How do you keep the main thing the main thing? We hope that it's helpful. Thanks for listening.
Well, great to have our listeners back here on another episode of the Riff. So we're excited. We're excited to have you. We're going to dive in if we have time after these preliminaries to hit a topic.
Of course.
Can we go into some preliminaries?
Absolutely.
I heard, and I don't oversell.
I've always said that.
I've heard that we had a listener in Sikeston.
No.
Now, that's not exactly true, but I heard that there's a person in Sikeston, Missouri that might listen, and which you probably know is the home of the original Lambert's thread rolls.
I do know that.
So, I feel like it's important that we don't just welcome our Southwest Mo audience, that we would say our Southwest and growing Southeast Mo audience.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot.
So, welcome.
Is Sikeston, is that like a metropolis? Would you consider
I think
that
it's just south of Pittsburgh. Yep.
Okay.
So I think it's a suburb. So, yeah.
Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
No, to
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll tell all of you.
Right.
All right. Well, it's the Riff.
Oh man, we're gonna riff today.
All right. Let's go for it.
Okay, so today we're gonna walk through missional drift. It's something you bring up quite often in the organization as you lead the team, as we lead volunteers, as you preach, as others preach. Like it's all about mission, right? And we were in a board meeting recently, and you kind of walked through what does that look like, right? How do we keep 10 and 2 mission focused, on mission? You gave some great examples, some great stories, and some things to look out for. And I think this can be applied to so many things other than the mission of this organization and the church as a whole. Right. Like, what's the mission for your family, right? What's the mission for yourself? Like, what are you looking for when you're saying, I don't want to drift on this? So just want to walk through that and see what you got on that. Let's riff on it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, you say the idea that this is helpful for every one of us, whether it's an organization we're influencing, whether it's our own lives. And we've talked about this in messaging before, that it's important to reflect. I feel like every day, if you take some time to reflect, what is my life producing? In our mental health series, we talked about the question when Elijah was just caved in and burned out, the question that God spoke to him was, what are you doing here, right? What is the purpose? And I think if we look at organizations throughout history, we'll see this importance of saying, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? And we tend to drift. Like if we ever go to the beach, if you go to the beach, like the ocean type of beach, you get in the water, you're playing in the water, and you've been to a spot where, you're out hanging in the water for 20 minutes, and then you look up and you're like, where's my family? Where's my picnic blanket, right? Where is this stuff? It's because just standing in that water, over time, you drift down shore, right? And so missions do that all the time. It's not a shock to anybody. We go 10 and 2. So as we go into like what our missional drift dangers would be and why we focus it, let's take a couple moments to talk about our mission. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what is our mission, what's always been the mission, ideations of it. Am I saying that right?
Ideation? I don't think
idiot. Yeah, like so.
Can we
like
get a dictionary check, Jaws? Can we get a? We're looking for ideation.
Ideation? No. Ideations. Versions of our mission over the year. So you've been on the team 12 years.
Yeah, safe place to find and follow Jesus.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, the formation of ideas or concepts.
Oh, Jaws, thank you.
Wow, is that ideation? Wow,
ideation.
You were right on, man.
What about, I think I was trying to say iteration.
Iteration.
Is iteration a word?
Dictionary, please.
We're gonna bring up iteration as well. Thank you for your patience, by the way, our listeners, for those who still are tuning in with us.
All right.
The repetition of a process.
Or utterance.
So let's talk about the different utterances that we've had on this vision. Safe place to find and follow Jesus. 12 years.
12 years.
What's that look like for you?
The mission has not changed. It really hasn't. The wording, right? The packaging of that has all about change lives. That's when I came onto staff here. But the principle and the core of it is we're going to reach the person that is not getting reached We're going to make it make sense to them, and we're going to help them walk this journey.
Yeah.
We're going to be a safe place to find and to follow Jesus Christ. Like that's we have been that from at least when I've been here. I don't know from day one. I wasn't here on day one. Might have been something crazy, but it got to that. I don't know. Yeah. I just don't think that it's changed. I think when you came, you actually made it stronger. And conversations like this, I think, make it stronger. And I think that if you've been at North Point for any time, I think you could probably say a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus and understand what that means.
Right.
We talk about it a lot because it's super important, because it's really easy to make it a safe place for us, or maybe just a safe house or a safe place, or, like morality, or, it's a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. So it's all of those pieces together, and it's walking through day in and day out, making sure that we're focused on that. And I wanted to walk through a couple of ways that you've done that as a leader, a way that you've done that with volunteers, with staff. Yeah. What are those pieces that you wake up thinking, all right, this is exactly how I'm going to be able to drive this mission and make sure that everybody sees exactly what we're seeing down the road. That's what we want. So how have you been able to do that for this time?
Yeah, and I think this conversation, as I kind of walk through some of this is I think so helpful for North Pointers. So if you've been along this journey for years or you're checking out, this is the behind the scenes. I think this is one of the purposes of why we even have the Riff. This type of topic right here is to help people understand what are we trying to accomplish. I remember when I was introduced to North Point during the transition. I had been familiar with North Point. I had a couple of friends who worked here. I was in a cohort with Tommy Sparger a couple different times. And so I'd have conversation of, hey, tell me a little bit about this place in Springfield, and knew about North Point. When there was a pastoral transition 10 years ago, when the board called me, the number one question and focus they had and the thought they had was, we have a very specific mission here at North Point. We're not looking to change our mission. We're looking to go forward with this mission. We believe in this mission, and that's priority number one. The church I was at in Seattle, I wasn't the lead pastor. I was associate pastor at the time, and our church's mission was very similar. And so for me, I wasn't looking to just go to a church. I wasn't looking just to leave, but I was interested in, if there was a church that had this kind of mission, then I want to be a part of that. So that's why, we've told the story, we didn't come out and visit North Point, because for me, the number one priority was mission. And if this is a church that believes in creating a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus, and that's priority number one, I'm in. I'm all in. And so for us, that is saying, okay, we want anybody to be able to walk in and feel like the message makes sense to them. And it's a great opportunity if they're interested in hearing the claims of Scripture. So that's important. It was important, and when North Point launched, it was important through the entire first 9 years of the church, as Tommy was the pastor, and then the transition. The important thing is, are we going to continue to have this as a priority? And for me, that answer is yes. But every month, every week, we have to look at this. Are we doing that? Because we'll look in history. Missions can drift. For example, in the 1500s, these Franciscan monks, they saw that there were a lot of people who couldn't afford the basic needs, food, supplies. And people were taking advantage of these people who didn't have the money, and they were charging exorbitant amounts of interest on these families. Say, hey, we'll give you what you're desperate for today, but it's actually going to cost you a lot more in the long run. So what you can't afford today, we're going to double down that you can't afford. And so they would end up taking advantage of vulnerable people. So these Franciscan monks see this in the 1500s, and they say, I think we can do something about it. And so they created this organization. It was a mission. They were food banks, that we will give you supplies and food. And we know you don't have anything to give us right now, so just secure it with something, and we'll be able to freeze your debt right here. And when you have a spot, you come and pay for it. Their whole point was, let's help the vulnerable. Well, that mission over the years turned into what we now call pawn shops, right? And not every pawn shop does this, but the industry as a whole, whether it's payday loans or pawn shops, a lot of them will charge exorbitant interest or take advantage of the vulnerable, knowing that they have to cough up something of value to them right now to get their basic needs. So this missional drift for what these food banks turn into these sharks, right? Well, we've seen that in education. For example, in the Boston area, in 1636, a bunch of pastors got together and they realized there were need for more churches, but they didn't have enough clergy or pastors to pastor these churches. So they decided, let's come together. Let's pool our resources. Let's start a Bible Institute with a mission of training pastors so that we can fill our churches. That was the number one goal in 1636, a little place called Harvard. And so Harvard was developed. And then in 1701, a bunch of pastors in the Boston area got together and said, hey, that project that we launched to be able to fill these churches with clergy, we're not training a bunch of pastors anymore. And the whole purpose, and they had said their Latin word for the purpose of the school of Harvard when they started it was truth, veritas. And so they're saying, hey, what we really want to do is create an institute where we create pastors. We're not doing it. This has become more academically focused than ministerial training. So they started a new Bible Institute, and there was one of these guys who was passionate about the cause. His name was Elihu Yale, and he says, I will fund this because I believe we need an institute that's just for developing pastors. Well, it did pretty well as an organization. It turned into Yale that started in 1701, and I'm not anti-Harvard, anti-Yale. If either of them would have accepted my application, I would have definitely gone there. But those are great institutions. That's awesome. But it is an example of missional drift. And for them, they came to a spot in their organization where they were saying, hey, we think our success could take us in this direction. Okay, no fault there. But if you want to guard the mission, you got to figure out, is my organization here to follow success or to guard the mission? At North Point, our desire is to guard the mission, that the mission is to be a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. That means we are not seeking the path to greater influence. We're not seeking the path to more success, because there will come a time where success can cost us our very mission. And while sometimes you got to change, for example, Young Life is a great organization. Young Life started out as barbershop quartets to reach the youngins, right? Well, they ended up having to say, okay, we're not having success here. What is our mission? Is our mission to develop barbershop quartets all over the land? Or is our mission to reach people for Jesus Christ? So they developed their methods to be able to continue to guard their mission. North Point exists to create a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus, to experience Jesus. That means our mission is not to be the largest church in Springfield. Now, if our mission results in great influence, awesome. Do I feel like there's a great need in this community? I do. So I'm not going to be surprised at how much influence our mission has if we do it well, but we must guard our mission. So, there's a lot of things that kind of pull at us to drift a little bit.
Right. So
good things.
Somebody that says you can't change that program, you can't take away this, whatever we do on a Sunday. You can't do this on a Wednesday. You can't. How do you differentiate those pieces from the mission? Like, how do you walk into those conversations and hear those needs and feelings and wrap that into the mission to where these things actually can change and it still doesn't impact the mission. It actually makes the mission stronger.
Right.
How do you walk through those conversations?
So we gotta hold the mission tightly, hold the methods loosely, right? I hold my role loosely. I mean, bottom line, and I've shared this with staff a lot, probably on this podcast and probably publicly, is there will come a day when me being the leading voice of North Point is not mission critical, right? As a matter of fact, there will be a day where me being the lead voice of North Point might actually hurt our mission. I hope I'm on the early end of noticing that, right? Because my priority is not for me to be the leading voice of North Point until I'm ready to retire. My point is, as long as I can help the mission, right? So I'm going to work hard at pushing out my shelf life because I really believe in the mission and I'd love to be a part of it, but not at the expense of the mission. So for example, any conversation is some programs are really great because they embody our mission well. Let's look at give back, our give back strategies over the years. Okay. Second Saturday, when I showed up, 10 years ago, that was that current, ideation version of giving back, right? It was every second Saturday.
And people loved it.
Loved it.
That's
second
actually
Saturday.
how Jamie and I got involved.
Really?
Yeah. Second Saturday.
It was a great opportunity to serve.
Huge.
It was very clear, hey, as a church, you want to help out? Come on second Saturday. And we give back. That was awesome. So I remember being blown away that there would be second Saturdays where you'd have 300 to 400 people volunteer. We would do an event and we would be able to make a big impact in a 4-hour chunk of time. It was great, second Saturdays. Those are awesome. It also impacted the kind of people we're able to serve because when you have 300 to 400 volunteers, it's quite a chore to be able to utilize 300 to 400 volunteers in that amount of time. And so it narrowed our ability, which organizations can provide that environment for us, handle that scope. Now, there were times we can make it bite-sized and we say, okay, we're going to send out 15 different teams of whatever, but it still is an impact. It also narrows down who can help, right? And so when we stopped doing necessarily second Saturday, like right now you look at it, we don't have second Saturday, and I'll have people come up and say, man, I really miss second Saturday. And I'll say, man, it was a great time. Tell me about it. Like, what do you miss about it? Well, I've really missed the fact that we were able to make an impact in our community. And I'm like, well, no, we still, the mission was to make an impact in the community. The mission was getting North Pointers involved. So right now what we have is we have different campuses that have give back opportunities, not exactly predictable like a second Saturday, but we have a every Wednesday. We serve more people as an organization through the Dream Center and different events than we ever have as an organization. We have more volunteer hours in a month than we ever had as an organization. So if the mission was to serve our community, the mission was to get North Pointers involved in hands-on serving. Right now, we do that more than we ever have. Now, are we doing it enough? No. Why? There's more needs in our community and there's more North Pointers to get involved. And so I feel like we have a tension right now is we cannot delegate everything to the Dream Center. Right? And so we're wanting to make sure, what are some ideas we can make sure that the Dream Center is not our give back strategy, but it is the best example of giving back. How do we do that in other ways in our organization? Is it a Dream Mobile that we rent out or borrow out, loan out to the different campuses and we do local stuff there? Is it like Nixa does an example, for example, they do a Wednesday night dinner as well now. And this summer they're doing it every Wednesday night. Republic giving back in just local ways. So we're trying to figure out, okay, one, we're doing the mission more than we ever have, but we need to do it better. So when someone says the answer is we should be doing second Saturdays, I would say no. Maybe we should add a Saturday event for you if that's what it works, because ultimately what we do value in the mission is getting people involved in serving our community. So we're doing it better than we ever have. We're not doing it as good as we want to do because there's still a big need. So that would be an example of mission critical. Good. So you can say, okay, classes, groups, okay? So we can play that. Mission critical. Is the mission to get X amount of people involved in a group? I think that's a metric. You want people involved. Is the mission to get more people to show up at a North Point campus more times during the week? No. Are we willing to offer things at a North Point campus more times a week if it helps people grow in their faith, connect in community? A lot of people have community, they just need to grow in their faith. A lot of people are growing in their faith, they just need to connect with community. There are things we can do to connect the dots, but we don't believe mission critical is that we have 70% of our constituency that shows up in a North Point class. Our goal is that everybody who calls North Point home has resources within arm's reach of desire, that if they desire to grow, they can, and they can take those simple tools to their existing community. And if someone doesn't have community, whether they're new to town or that's just been a muscle that they're not great at developing yet, that we would provide some opportunities for you to come and experience community. But mission critical is that people have resources to grow and they have relationships that matter. So I think that's going to look different than when my parents were growing up in their church.
Right.
So
so I think one of a phenomenal attribute you have as a leader is the ability to change and the ability to not hold things.
I just changed that though. I decided.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
But I like it. I really like it though.
Okay.
What are some middle pieces that you do in order not to idolize a strategy? And this could be in anything. This could be in parenting. This could be in marriage. This could be in a business. And especially if the strategy works. Because I think it's really easy to not idolize something when it doesn't work and be like, oh, it's not the mission.
Right.
It's not. But when something does work and you still know, there's another piece that we got to hit.
Right.
And it's different.
So I think part of it is you can't be afraid of the conversation. And we joke about this is you got to be fascinating, right? Like when someone says, hey, what if we did it differently, right? You're like, okay. Well, so let me get that right. You're saying something that is one of our strengths, something that's working really well, you wonder if we should do it differently. Fascinated, okay? Tell me why. And if the deal is like, I'm just bored with it, that's lame. Right. If it's like, and if the answer is, I think we can hit our mission more effectively doing this. See, the biggest challenge to a church's staying fresh in your vision is not the bad programs that you have going on. It's the good programs that you don't want to lose. Like we're all ready to sell our bad programs on Facebook Marketplace, okay? But it's the good programs that pose a bigger threat to any organization, because now I can take pride in the method. And there's so many anecdotal measurements from people of like, I love this, and they love it for great reasons. And then what you have to do is you have to be able to have the conversation of, I love that you love it. What you loved was effective. What we're going to do, we believe is mission critical as well. So let's love it. So, everything we do, like for example, specials. It used to be like when I came, every weekend we're going to do a special. It's going to be crazy. And the whole purpose of why we had specials at North Point long before I got there was, here's a song that you didn't expect to hear today that tees up the message really well. Powerful. And it became, North Point was known for like, how are they going to present the message of Jesus this week? That's nuts. Over time, and I felt this pressure when I was here too, if you value, what are they going to do that you don't expect to do in church? And side note, this might not even help the message. Now I might have to spend 10 minutes trying to justify the fact of what we just did to try and tie it in loosely to what I want to talk about today. All of a sudden you look back and say, okay, this method became king. I don't care if we do a top 40 song. I don't care if we do a song no church would ever do. I'm not afraid of that if it serves up the purpose, which is lowers the guard and helps people, it tees up the message. I also don't care if it's an old Christian song. We're not anti that. We're pro anything that tees up the message. So what we have to do is not be too cool that we ignore things that don't look trendy, and we can't be so cool that we hang on to things that we have been known for. We've got to be willing to say, hands up, holding loosely the methods, gripping the mission. So for example, at North Point, our mission is to create a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. And it's anecdotal. How do you measure that? How do you know if you're succeeding? For us, I believe the number one metric to watch is water baptisms. And I know some people can mark a card and say, okay, I just made a decision to follow Jesus. The truth is we have a lot of people mark those cards, and I don't know what that means. For some people, they grew up Catholic, and that's confessional. I did something bad last week, and I'm making a new decision to follow Jesus. And I think it means something. Right. I just don't know that it means that someone's being transformed right now of saying, for the first time, I'm making a decision to follow Jesus. We have to see that. And so COVID, this last season has been a challenge. So matter of fact, walk us through some of the different things that we've had to wrestle through to guard our mission in the last few years. We've had a lot of opportunities to be distracted.
Well, what's interesting for me?
Yeah.
We stopped doing services.
That's right.
We didn't like meet a ton, and I still feel like we were on mission. And that messed with my mind.
Why would you feel like we were on mission during that time?
Because we knew 100% day in and day out when we woke up and when we came to work, whatever that looked like, we wanted to create a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. And at that point, it didn't include gathering on a Sunday,
right?
Which messed with my mind because I'm like, that's my job though, right? Like that's my position. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's not the mission.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a method, right? So, I mean, you look through the last 2 years and we went through so many different versions, not iteration, of what church looks like, right? And we're still walking through that. We're still walking and wrestling through how do we meet people where they are, right?
Yes.
We saw one of the best responses we've seen through Mind Your Mind series a couple of weeks ago. We're meeting people where they are. We want to meet you where you are. What are those pieces? Yeah. What are the resources, right? Is it a Sunday service? Maybe. Is it a Saturday service? Maybe. Is it Wednesday at 2? I don't know. Could be.
Right.
So those are the pieces that I think that we've been wrestling with. And I think the further we get away from COVID and what that was, I think the less innovative and the less effective we're going to be. Because I think that really we have an opportunity still, with COVID still in our mind, of that stuff didn't actually matter. And I mean it matters, right? But overall, right? Like at the end of the day, when I'm no longer at North Point and I'm in a rocking chair, I'm not going to think back, Sunday, July 9th. Do you remember that, James? Do you remember that?
Right.
But I think we will talk about, do you remember that relationship? Do you remember them? Like, do you remember what they did there? Like, do you remember what Jesus did?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Right.
That's what we're going to talk about. So I think that kind of thought is easy to think about, but when you're in it, you really want to just focus on the method and what we're doing today. And it was
right.
I don't know, man. Like, you talk a lot, open hands, and I don't think that's like open hands, be sloppy, be just whatever, but it's like an open hand of like, hey, we're missing something. We're missing something. Like, let's make sure that we're looking at the essence of what this really is. What's the principle? What is this? So that's kind of what we've been walking through at North Point on staff. And it's not easy. It's not definable, right? Like you just said, there's not it's not anecdotal and you can say, well, X and Y and this, and now it's a safe place. And now they're finding and following Jesus.
We're 87% safe.
Right?
We don't know.
But baptisms are a huge deal with that, right? And that was also a huge challenge because you see our target audience don't want to come to church to start with, okay? Yeah. Then you add a pandemic, and then you add crazy stuff around the pandemic, and then you add it's just like layer on layer on layer on layer of why you wouldn't want to.
Attending church, especially if you don't know of one, the PR of that has never been worse, right?
Sure.
Because people would associate this with any political affiliation, any stance on your medical position. I mean, all these different things. You're like, so people who were least likely to gather pre-pandemic were less likely to gather during pandemic, but we're seeing that change now. One of the things too, during the pandemic, where we weren't able to gather, the thing that kept me sane a little bit during that time, that we're not wasting our time, is the Dream Center. Is during that time, we doubled and tripled our ability to reach our community in a time our community needed it most. And so if you asked us, are we living our mission? I'm like, yes. Church attendance for that season is not going to give me an affirmation. But if our mission is to serve our community well, wow. So thank God we were positioned. Thank God we were positioned to be able to have online ability to reach people. And then we had a question in the board meeting that we discussed, because one of I think there's 3 things that the board does, right? Yeah. The board's number 1, if I list the 3, they're my personal accountability. I mean, we're part of the denomination, and so if I say anything, and I know sound bites aren't sound, but if someone sends a sound bite to, someone, they'll keep me in check theologically. Yeah. But the board knows us, they know our mission, and so they provide accountability. The second thing is the financial oversight, for the budget for going into the year and how we're managing it throughout the year. Third thing is just guarding the mission of this church. So we talked about in our board meeting, what does it mean? What are we doing to make sure we don't drift to be a church that's too far on the spectrum, either whether it's politically right or left, or theologically way conservative where we have a niche conservatively, or way liberal where we have a niche there. And I don't even have a problem with churches who decide, hey, we're on this niche, because that's their mission, right? Our mission, though, has always been, one of the things that we talked about in 2015, we did a series called The Other Side. And in The Other Side, it was this whole idea how we talked different times in Scripture where Jesus would go to the other side of the lake. Jesus went to the other side of this place and that place. And we talked about how there's another side to Jesus, and sometimes our experience is one way, but there's the other side. And so with that, we had this video, and we had these lyrics on a wall, but it goes from one side of the wall to the other. So at the beginning of the video, we would have people reading these words that talk about church in a very polarized way. Like, I want to go to a church where everyone has their act together, everyone believes the same thing, everyone votes the same way, I'm never challenged. I want that church, right? Something like that. But then when you pan out and you look at the other side of the wall, those sentences continue, and it says, I want a church where not everybody believes the same thing, where we don't all vote the same way, but we all come together and we know that we've all got issues and we are desperate for Jesus to be the one that transforms us, something like that. And in 2015, before the pandemic, before the last presidential race, we'll probably have to dust it out here in another couple of years, before a lot of these tensions that made polarizing palatable for people, and a lot of people demanded to be polarized and have echo chambers. Before that, when we would show that video, there was a visceral response. People would be like, oh, disgusted by the one side. I don't want to be a part of a church that is all the same politically, that is all the same. And then when we panned out, people were kind of like, yes, this is North Point. And that's always been our mission. Well, during the last couple of years, what's interesting is a lot of people have discovered they actually were more comfortable on being a part of a place where they knew everybody was the same, right? Or if you saw another North Pointer post something on Facebook that you were so disgusted, and you're like, oh, I don't know that I want to worship with that person. People thought like that. I thought like that, right? I'm sure I posted stuff and made people think like that about me. But at the end of the day, you have to say, okay, what is North Point? So that's the question is, how do we know we're doing what we're doing? And for me, it's teaching. We are Jesus-centric. We are Jesus-centric. And we've got Next Class that I encourage people to go online on our website, our resources. You can take that at your own pace and place, in 10-minute chunks or whatever, and we talk about why we do what we do. But here it is in a nutshell. We exist to help an unchurched person, people who have said no to Jesus or never had the opportunity to say yo, or people who might say yo if they knew there was another side to it, that we would present in the middle of a Bible Belt. We would give them an opportunity to see a Jesus that loves them like crazy, and we want to be Jesus-centric. Our mission is not to be a cool place for the unchurched to experience morality. Our mission is not to be the most innovative church in town. Our vision and mission is not for unchurched people to just be, excited about that they don't need religion. Our vision is for anybody who wants to explore the claims of Scripture to hear it in a way where they hear Jesus speaking to them, and they say, wait a second, I've tried to dismiss this for years, but what you're saying about Jesus is speaking to my heart. You're speaking my language. And I've got to explore this further. Is there room at the table for me? And so Jesus-centric message. Now, there are some things on both sides of end times and Holy Spirit expression and what does holiness look like in our own lives. There are some things that we're all going to disagree on this, and that's great. But we are going to communicate a message of Jesus. Jesus sent by God, God in the flesh, who came. He lived a life in pursuit of us. He died, was risen, and is coming again. That's Jesus, and he is for all of us, and we want to give everybody a chance. That's our vision. So anything that gets in the way of that, anything that excludes people to that conversation, or anything that if we go way more conservative and we can grow as a result of that, we will not chase success. We will chase the vision because we think there's room for it.
You do a great job with this. So keep doing it, man.
Yeah.
Keep doing it.
I mean, we have such a great church family who is all in on this mission. And we have a team of people who work here who will do anything possible to advance that mission. And so I just feel like now that the dust is settled on some of these distracting issues, and not that we're not going to have challenging times and polarizing moments ahead of us, but now that our mission is probably more attractive in a time where people don't necessarily need to be as polarized, I feel like what an opportunity we have here in this whole area to help bring our friends to an experience with Jesus, whether it's at work, in the neighborhood, maybe they're open to an invitation at church as well. So it's a great opportunity. Let's do that. So thanks for listening to another episode. Hopefully, this makes sense of why we do what we do. We're so excited about what Jesus can do in this community. We believe in transformation, and we want to do everything possible to create a safe place for people to find and follow Him.
Great.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Hey, thanks so much. God bless you, Sykeston, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. Submit a question for the podcast at northpointchurch.tv/podcast. We'll have a brand new episode every week wherever you find podcasts.